Hi everybody, we are going to learn about LightRoom Classic. So if you are using a different photo editing software, you can find one that matches your particular software. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the layout here. So if you notice that up here, this is the Mac version or the OS version for Mac. And you have up here your pull down windows. You have the preference window, you have the files, the edit, the library, the photo, the metadata, the view, the window, and of course your help. Your help is going to be very useful to you, so please use that when necessary. So this right here is, as you can see, this is the library setting. The library lets you look at your images that you are going to bring in. So we're just going to bring in one. So I dragged and dropped, and yes, so it will show you the different types of pictures that are available. But if you only want the one checked, or if you want to take ones out or add more, all you have to do is change the check. But we're just going to go over and import this cat photo. So this is the one that is going to be as part of our library. We're still in library. So the next thing we need to do is develop. So you can see the individual picture. If you look down here, you can navigate through your other photos, but since we don't have any other photos right now, we only have the one, we only have to highlight the one. When you get into doing panoramic pictures or large scale files, we're going to be using a lot of this down here, this area down here. So let's take a quick look at what we're seeing right here. As you can see, this is the picture that we are focusing on, and these are our panels over here that we will be using. So there are more than what we need. And right now, the only thing that we're going to be working on is just this, the adjustments. We're not really going to be working on anything else. So there are a lot of added slides, but the only ones that we need to work on are these ones up here in where it says basic. Do not worry about your tone curve, your colors, detail, lens correction. We're not going to be worrying about any of these. So you can unswivel them and then swivel them when you get back. So up here we have particular little tools. So this is our cropping tool. We can crop it in, we can crop it out, we can squish it down, and only that area in that box will be used. So as you can see, I want to crop in. Instead of doing lens correction, we're just going to crop in. And if you want, if you can see from my hand tool, that brings that up and down in the center. And then you have over here two arrows pointing in a curve that will swivel. Now I don't need to swivel. It's a cat, very level, so I'm going to hit Command Z to reverse back to where it was before. But learn how to level. That happens a lot in drone imaging. Or you can go to reset, or you can go to the previous. So I'm going to go to done, and so I'm back to my color basics. Some of these other tools up here are your spot removal, so you can use those to remove certain spots, which we will get back to later. You have your red eye correction, and then you have your various selection tools, your rectangular selection tool, your round selection tool, And then you have your mask tool, which we will not be using. Not right now. There is a possibility later. All right, so this is what you're going to be using as your palette. So as you can tell, we have temperature, we have tint, we have exposure, contrast, highlight, shadow, whites, blacks, texture, clarity, dehaze, vibrance, saturation. Get to know this panel the most. So the only thing that we are going to be focusing on is the exposure, the temperature, our highlights and shadows, our blacks and our whites, and then the difference between vibrance and saturation. And all you need to do is grab and click and move. As you can see, it brightens up. Beautiful. So when you brighten up, go right ahead and turn your highlights down. So if your exposure goes up, turn your highlights down a bit, and you can see the difference in the texture of the cat's fur here. And then you can also check to see whether or not you want to get rid of the shadows. It turns her very pale, or add more, which turns her very black, or just somewhere in between. I'm going to just bring out her fur just a little bit. Now here are your whites and your blacks. Your blacks and your whites will be ones that you need to be very careful about. If you want to add more white to it and brighten it up, usually you will go back down with the blacks to really highlight those blacks. Sometimes you might have to go the opposite, in which you take away some of that white and bring up some of the black. In this case, we are going to bring her whites up and her blacks down. So you can see her white fur around her nose, and you can see her black parts of her tail. Beautiful. Do not worry about texture, clarity, or dehaze. They do make a difference. Go ahead and play around with them. But they sometimes add a little too much detail or take away too much detail, depending on the type of picture you want to take. Now let's go down to vibrance and saturation. You are more likely going to be using vibrance because vibrance brings out the natural color. As you can see, this is more vibrance and this is less vibrance. And bring it back. I usually bring it up just a little bit just to see a little bit. And then you can play around with saturation as well. Saturation kind of brings a little bit more of the orange color out and brings it back to black and white. We will be doing black and whites later. But all you need is a little bit of vibrance, and it brings out the color. If you want to go right ahead and practice with your temperature looks, the temperature really won't change if you're outdoors, but sometimes if you're indoors taking photos, you might want to bring the temperature down to a more white or clear. But if you also want to turn it into a hot sunny day, bring up the temperature, and if you want to turn into a cold winter evening, bring out the blue. But we're just going to bring it out. So that was it. That's all you need to do for this first assignment. Go up to your file, go up to export. You'll get your little export box. You can do a specific folder, and you can turn it into a JPEG is the best way. Down here you can change it to different ones depending on your needs, but let's keep it to a JPEG and click export. Now the great thing about LightRoom as well as other Adobe products is they don't change your original. So if you want to redo this or you want to do something different, then say I want to do a little bit more of a black and white where I turn down the saturation, but I want to bring up the exposure and bring up the highlights a little bit to just bring it and turn it into a nice black and white photo. Bring up the whites, bring down the blacks. Then I can do that as well. I can go File, export, and I can do the same thing, and I could rename it well. But I do not want to do that. If you are looking for a different software, we will find there will be other software tutorials available. That's it. All right.